At first, he thought Karina was just a troublesome girl who needed his care, but slowly she began to enter his heart. From his initial awkwardness, when helping Karina fix her hair, to becoming skilled and natural without even realizing it, he had grown accustomed to having her by his side every day. He loved her, but now Karina had described his love as merely comfort. Although Miran knew Karina was speaking against her true feelings, he couldn't help feeling a bit her. But he didn't argue. He respected all of Karina's choices. Therefore, after a moment of silence, Miran spoke. Karina, if thinking of it that way makes you feel better, then consider what just happened as comfort. But you should understand that you really have no talent for acting. Your expression right now looks like an abandoned puppy. All right, be good and go to sleep. I'll be right outside. If you feel unwell, you can call me anytime, Miran said, helpless but adoringly. After he left, Karina remained lost in thought. He is so gentle, I said such hurtful words, yet he didn't get angry with me. Instead, he gently comforted me with concern. Knowing I was lying yet not arguing with me, why did I have to meet him when I'm about to die? Finally, Karina could only bury her head deep in the blanket, softly expressing her true feelings. Miran, I like you too, but we ultimately cannot be together. Karina fell asleep filled with sadness. Recently, in the imperial capital, a painter named Karina suddenly appeared. No one knew who she was or where she came from. People only knew she was a genius painter afflicted with the artistic disease. It was said that anyone who saw Karina's paintings would have the illusion of entering the world within the painting. Some couldn't help but speculate about the painter Karina's identity. Some guessed she was a child, others said she was just a famous painter who had changed her name. Despite various rumors, the Carlos family, who was behind the scenes, was willing to auction off the unknown painter Karina's works, but remained silent regarding information about her identity. Nevertheless, Karina's paintings still attracted nobility from across the empire, even forming a trend among the nobles of taking pride in owning one of Karina's paintings. At the Carlos family's auction, nobles fought fiercely to acquire one of Karina's paintings. Even old friends turned against each other. Watching this, Duke Carlos below the stage couldn't help but sigh. It seemed he had underestimated Karina's talent in painting. At this moment, he was looking forward to how Karina's family, who had once neglected her, would react when her name spread across the continent. Through the mouths of these nobles, surely when they learned that the girl they once saw as ordinary had become so accomplished, they would deeply regret it. But what Duke Carlos didn't know was when Karina's father heard the news of Karina's fame, his first reaction was still denial. Because in his eyes, Karina would always be just a disobedient, thoughtless, and utterly ordinary daughter. When Karina's older brother saw his father's attitude, he finally understood why his always obedient and sensible sister Karina had left home without any reluctance. He realized now that he had been just like his father, always neglecting this sister who had silently devoted herself to him. But unfortunately, his awakening came too late. He deeply regretted not cherishing her before, so this time he chose to rebel. Father, do you really want to continue like this? What if this painter really is Karina? All the characteristics described about the unknown painter match Karina. If you keep denying it, aren't you afraid that one day you will truly lose her? Are you really going to abandon your own daughter? He questioned his father fiercely. For a moment his father was stunned. After hearing his son's words, a trace of fear appeared in his heart. Yes, fear, not guilt, because what he was thinking was, if that painter really was his ordinary second daughter, what should he do? What will happen to his reputation after people learned of her circumstances? What if she deliberately disgraced her family? While Karina's father was worrying whether his daughter would seek revenge after becoming famous, Karina was already attending the most grand festival in the north, the festival. Accompanied by Duke Miran along the way, Karina appeared very nervous. She had never interacted with these northern nobles before and wasn't particularly familiar with northern etiquette. While Miran kept reassuring her, saying northern banquets weren't as formal as those in the capital, just act naturally like when interacting with friends. But when the two opened the doors to the banquet hall, they were stunned. The ballroom was decorated lavishly. The guests looked elegant. The usually casual Baron Krampa had also dressed up lavishly today. He made a graceful bow. Your Grace, you've arrived. We've been waiting for you and your fiancé for a long time, he spoke politely. Instantly, veins popped on Miran's face, irritably pressing his nose bridge. This person must be deliberately taunting him, making everything so formal. Karina would feel burdened now, but with Karina beside him, Miran could only suppress his anger and ask, Baron Krampa, have something joyful happened recently? You're dressed so magnificently. Like a peacock seeking a mate, his tone was so gritted, but Baron Krampa seemed completely oblivious to the sarcasm behind his words, and continued on his own. Oh my, you've noticed, I'm happy of course, because at the Eve Festival alcohol is unlimited, I can drink as much as I want, how could I not be happy? Now Marion finally understood, so this fellow really was here to see him embarrassed, because he had postponed the Eve Festival. Another person joined them, the Count Ariel, after a quick greeting said sharply, Duke Miran, who exactly wanted to hold an Eve Festival? Such banquets are truly boring. This was outrageous, thought Miran. Weren't they all known for being crafty and experienced? Why were they all so tactless today? If looks could kill with Duke Miran's current gaze, these two troublemakers would have died hundreds of times already, but to avoid ruining his image as a gentleman in Karina's eyes, Miran could only endure temporarily, planning to settle the score later. As the atmosphere grew increasingly tense, Karina gently tugged at his sleeve, indicating she wanted to greet everyone, but Miran responded, You want to greet these guys? I really don't think that's necessary. But some people insisted on defying his wishes. Baron Krampa raised his left hand high. Hello, beautiful lady, I am Baron Kran, and I am Marin Ariel, just call me Marin. The two introduced themselves. Nice to meet you, Karina responded. You're much more polite than some people faced, someone jabbed at Miran. With such warm greetings, Karina politely responded to each one and explained that Miran had postponed the Eve Festival because of her hoping everyone wouldn't mind, but these words were quickly interrupted by Miran. Don't worry, Karina, the Eve Festival is just a simple drinking gathering, postponing it doesn't matter. Hearing this, Baron Krampa and Viscount Ariel were quite speechless. He really makes up lies without any hesitation. I really want to expose him. Let it go, let's just go along with him. If we dare mock him in front of Miss Karina, he'll definitely seek revenge later. While the two were whispering among each other, Miran looked around regretfully. Originally, he had wanted to show Karina around the banquet, but now it was too noisy. Noticing his dilemma, Baron Krampa bowed again and stated that His Grace must be busy with many affairs, and he could escort Miss Karina around the banquet and introduce her to all the noble ladies of the north. Miran scoffed. You wish. He didn't trust anyone to behave properly in front of Karina, worried they might ruin his well-maintained image in front of her. Smiling at Karina, he said, Don't listen to his nonsense, I'm not busy, let me introduce you to the northern noble ladies. But not being busy was just Duke Miran's lie. His subordinates behind him were all silently signaling denial. Karina looked seriously at Miran. Is the Duke really not busy? Do you truly have time to accompany me? I'm quite simple-minded, please don't deceive me, she asked, worried she might disturb him. In the end, Miran surrendered and admitted that he was indeed busy, allowing Karina to tour the banquet hall with Baron Krampa's, but only for 30 minutes. I'll quickly finish dealing with formalities and come to you. Even as he left, his heart felt somewhat empty. Karina didn't try to make him stay until the very end. After Duke Miran unwillingly separated from Karina, everyone immediately rushed towards her with sparkling eyes. Karina, you're amazing, how did you do it? Miran is like an obedient puppy around you. Yes, how did you tame this fierce wolf? This is the first time I've seen him listen to someone like that. Faced with these questions, Karina was too embarrassed to answer. Fortunately, a guest interrupted their conversation at this moment. Hello, Miss Karina, I presume you are Duke Miran's fiancé. Nice to meet you, I am Count Leonhardt. He introduced himself. Karina hurriedly recalled and explained, although this will be announced soon, I should tell everyone in advance my engagement with Duke Miran has been dissolved, so please don't joke about this anymore. Now it was everyone else's turn to be embarrassed. If that's the case, why did His Grace order us to send all the heron collected during this campaign to the north? Yes, we thought the Duke was doing it for that purpose. Karina felt confused hearing their words. Duke Miran indeed collected it for me, but what purpose are you referring to? Someone realized what was the problem. Karina, you're not from the north, are you? No wonder you don't know. In the north, heron is very precious, so people usually give it to very important people like parents or comrades who have faced death together. If you give it to someone of the opposite sex, it means you consider them your life partner, they explained. Instantly, Karina's face turned red. She recalled her first outing with Miran when they encountered magical beasts. Miran had personally given her a heron. At that time, no wonder the soldiers around them had teased them, so giving it to someone of the opposite sex had such meaning. Hadn't she hurt Miran's feelings? Karina felt bad for her ignorance and got along well with the people at the party. Miran had a question in his mind. Why did Karina always emphasize that she was a person who would soon leave? He always felt that the meaning behind these words was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Miran returned to the banquet hall intending to discuss the plan for subjugating magical beasts with everyone, but everyone's topic kept focusing on Karina. This made him very curious. "What did Karina say to you all just now that has you fellows so interested in her?" he asked, curious. "What else could we talk about? Of course, about how our Grand Duke's spring has arrived." Seeing Baron Krampa's annoying expression, Miran had no intention of tolerating it. He went straight for a chokehold. If Count Leonhardt hadn't interrupted in time, our gossipy Baron Kran would likely have suffered a beating tonight. Count Leonhardt also had some questions because he could tell that Karina must be a young lady from a prominent family, yet Karina didn't seem like a young lady who had grown up without worries, because he observed even when Karina was smiling, her brow would inadvertently reveal traces of sadness, and he had heard she suffered from an incurable disease. Was that the reason? Miran was surprised. "Karina even told you all about that? Well, since she's mentioned it herself, I won't hide it from you. My purpose for collecting heron this time is to treat her illness, but I'm somewhat confused. Clearly, after collecting enough heron, we should be able to make a proper treatment potion, and her illness could be cured, but now she keeps thinking about leaving." Hearing this, Count Leonhardt had something to say. "As someone who has been through it, I must say a person with many scars often fears taking the first step, so sometimes you might try slowing down to approach her. I can see that you care deeply for this young lady, but what exactly is this incurable disease?" he asked. Miran couldn't explain clearly either. He only knew that if Karina's condition continued to progress, she would lose part of her body, but what exactly would she lose? Thinking carefully now, neither Carlos nor Dr. Winston had ever told him in detail what the worst outcome would be. While Duke Miran was deep in thought, Baron Krampa's words reminded him, "If you don't know what will be lost, why not ask someone who has had this disease? The information obtained should be the most accurate." "Someone who has had this disease," he suggested. "Yes, why don't I ask that person?" Miran instantly thought of someone, the art supply store owner whom he met when he went shopping for art supplies with Karina. Wasn't he someone suffering from the artistic disease who had lost sensation in his hands? Miran found the art store owner that night and asked him about everything from when he first contracted the artistic disease until he lost his entire arm, but after the art store owner described his symptoms, Duke Miran keenly noticed that the symptoms described by the store owner were very different from Karina's symptoms when she had an attack. Because when Karina had an attack, she would often feel as if someone was tightly gripping her heart, like being trapped in a giant rotating millstone. The pain would spread to every inch of her skin, while the art store owner, during his attacks, only felt hand spasms and pain. However, the art store owner calmly stated that each artist's miracle was different, therefore the symptoms of the artistic disease also varied, but when he learned from Duke Miran that Karina's miracle could create life, he could no longer remain calm, because as far as he knew, the price required for a miracle that could create life was only one thing: the creator's life. Hearing this, Miran stood up with a bang. "What did you say? Life is the price? Why have they never told me this? And why did she lie to me?" Miran decided to find out the truth. Meanwhile, Karina was suffering from another symptom of artist's disease. One day, when Karina was painting with Miran by her side, when Miran had casually mentioned that he wanted a portrait of Karina, but Karina had expressed that she would prefer to paint a portrait of Miran himself. Miran was delighted to hear this. To have his portrait painted by the girl he liked was undoubtedly something worth being happy about. So today Karina planned to complete his portrait and present it to him as a gift. Karina was painting in her studio when she gradually fell into daze. As the brush continued to sketch on the paper, Karina started having auditory hallucinations. A voice was constantly urging and guiding her to quickly complete this work and activate the miracle to create a Miran. That way, Miran would belong solely to her. She could possess him completely. Thus, Karina's consciousness was gradually taken over by this bewitching voice. The speed of her brush kept accelerating. Her consciousness seemed to be controlled by something dark, her mouth repeatedly muttering the same phrase over and over again. "Soon it will be complete. Create a miracle. Miran, I will have you soon." As she was about to finish the painting with a final stroke, she was stopped by Carlos. Fortunately, Karina's expression was discovered by Carlos in time, who had come to share the news of auction's success with her. When he saw her crazed state, he immediately stepped forward to prevent Karina from completing painting, but Karina's consciousness had been completely overtaken by that bewitching voice. She struggled frantically, trying to break free from his restraining hand, wanting to complete this painting that would instantly claim her life. Carlos called out to her and successfully managed to awaken the frenzied Karina. After Karina calmed down, Carlos asked her about the cause and effect of what had happened. Looking at the nearly completed portrait, he felt a wave of fear. Thankfully, he had stopped Karina in time, otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable. However, he still had questions. "Karina, you said your consciousness was taken over by a voice. Did you try to resist at any point?" But Karina didn't know. She didn't know if she couldn't stop, or if she had found a reason not to want to stop. This feeling was just like what she had experienced as a child. Hearing her words, Carlos's expression changed dramatically. He discovered something shocking in her statement. "Karina, when you were little, had you already given life to someone?" he asked. Karina was ashamed to face him. She recalled a particular incident. When Karina was very young, her family went out for a trip. Little Abelia was being naughty. After breaking free from Karina's hold, she accidentally fell and scraped her knee. Karina's parents, without asking for the reason, placed all the blame on Karina, accusing her of letting go of her sister's hand and pointing out that Karina was healthy, but Abelia was different, accusing her of deliberately letting go of her hand. Her parents called her vicious, yelled that at such a young age her thoughts were already so malicious, and slapped Karina hard. That was the first time Karina had been hit. With a face soaked of tears, Karina wanted to explain, but her parents wouldn't give her the chance. Back home, Karina cried bitterly. It was the first time she felt that being born healthy was a sin. Whenever Karina was sad, she would take out paper and draw to soothe her wounded heart. Once again, she started painting. It was then that the seductive voice appeared. That voice constantly whispered in Karina's ear, "There are no parents in this world who cherish you, so if you want loving parents, just draw them. Draw parents who only have eyes for you." And just like that, when Karina came to her senses, a pair of parents smiling tenderly had appeared. That was Karina's first time giving life to a person. At that time, she didn't know that giving life to a person in a drawing would have such a huge price. Although the parents from the drawing only stayed with her for 10 minutes, it was those brief 10 minutes that gave Karina the courage to go on. After hearing Karina recount this childhood experience, Carlos clenched his fists in anger. Now he finally understood why Karina hadn't completed many works yet, was so seriously ill. At the same time, he hadn't expected that there could be such unreasonable parents in the world. Was it because the younger daughter had poor health that the healthy second daughter had to bear everything? If they had paid even a little attention to Karina, given her just a bit of love, then Karina's condition wouldn't have developed to such an irreversible stage. Carlos looked at this girl whose heart was full of trauma and couldn't help but feel heartbroken himself. He held Karina's hand tightly, comforting her softly. "What happened in the past is over. You didn't know then that giving life to a person would have such a great price. It's not your fault, but Karina, you absolutely cannot create miracles again in the future. And I promise you, no matter what, I will do my utmost to keep you alive, so you must also have the desire to live." Seeing Carlos's determined eyes, Karina also strengthened her resolve to live. "Don't worry, Carlos, I want to live. This desire is stronger than ever before." But just as Carlos was about to breathe a sigh of relief, Miran, who had learned the truth from the art store owner, returned, and the furious Miran happened to see Carlos holding Karina's hand, kneeling on one knee before her. This made the already angry Miran even more furious. A battle born from misunderstanding was about to begin. Although this was a misunderstanding, Miran was already on the verge of madness. He was like a fierce wolf about to pounce on its prey, staring intently at Carlos, who was still holding Karina's hand, but because Karina was present, Miran chose to suppress his feelings temporarily. Jealously, he separated their joined hands, declaring his ownership in front of Carlos, holding Karina tightly in his arms, and also discover the gift Karina had prepared for him at the risk of her life, a portrait more handsome than he actually was. Looking at his own portrait, Miran instantly changed from a fierce wolf to a husky. This was the first time someone had given him a portrait. He was truly happy. Miran had many questions to ask his good brother Duke Carlos. Seeing Marian suddenly calling him Carlos immediately felt an ominous premonition. Indeed, after the two left Karina's room, Miran gave Carlos a hard punch. "You knew all along that Karina didn't have long to live, so why did you lie to me?" he asked furiously. But Carlos didn't want to explain too much, because he had promised Karina to keep her condition secret, so he simply said he was bound by a promise. Hearing his answer, Miran raised his just lowered fist again and swung it hard at Carlos. But when the fist was about to land on Carlos, he thought of Karina. He didn't understand why Karina had concealed her condition from him, why Carlos could know something that He was only now finding out with a sense of heartbreak and confusion. He finally lowered his fist, but this didn't mean he was letting the matter go. He warned Carlos fiercely, "No matter what, you must save Karina," but such warnings meant nothing to Carlo because even without Miran's warning, he would have done everything in his power to save Karina. Carlos was certainly not one to take a loss. Simply accepting defeat wasn't in his nature, so the two began another fierce battle. Afterward, both men lay on the ground gasping for breath. Miran seized the opportunity to voice his doubts, asking why Karina had requested they conceal her condition, but Carlos didn't want to get too involved in this matter. He only left behind one sentence: perhaps she doesn't want to be abandoned again before she dies. After Carlos left, Miran immediately sought out the butler, asking him to collect all information about the art disease. He now needed to understand more deeply about the art disease, because only then could he help Karina. Now he understood why Karina, despite liking him, always pushed him away at crucial moments. Because in this world, nothing could be more cruel than allowing someone to fall in love with a person whose life was coming to an end. But now what Miran feared most was a world without Karina. Karina, on the other hand, had been feeling strange lately. She sensed something unusual in the behavior of Miran and Carlos. Karina keenly noticed that Miran was communicating with her less and less whenever she spoke with him. He always seemed distracted, and an odd expression would appear on his face. As for Carlos, she rarely saw him these days. Karina remembered when they last met, Carlos's face was covered in bruises. According to him, this was a unique form of communication between him and Miran. Although Karina found it peculiar, she didn't feel it was her place to get involved in matters between the two brothers, so Karina focused all her attention on the upcoming expedition to defeat the magical beasts, because this might be the last time she could help Miran. Sometimes she wondered when exactly she had become accustomed to a life with Miran. Would she miss him when they eventually parted ways? At this moment, Dr. Winston interrupted her thoughts. "Karina, it's time for your medical checkup. Let's go back to your room now." After the examination was complete, Dr. Winston inquired about Karina's recent physical condition as usual, but when Karina claimed she was feeling fine, Dr. Winston sighed. "Karina, you don't need to lie to me. This doesn't help with treating your condition." Seeing this, Karina reluctantly told the doctor that her physical condition was not good at all. Recently, her episodes had become increasingly frequent, and during each attack, she had thoughts of ending her life. Yet, she couldn't confide in anyone because lately, she often felt that she had wronged everyone connected to her, and she felt she had committed a grave mistake against Miran. She felt like dying as the pain during her attacks grew more intense each time. This feeling that her life was approaching its end became stronger and stronger. Karina's condition kept worsening. Her episodes not only became more frequent, but the pain that accompanied them grew more excruciating, and after being tormented by illness for so long, Karina inevitably developed thoughts of ending her life. So Karina now constantly felt that she was letting everyone down, disappointing all those who cared for her. Everyone was trying their best for her health, yet she was the first to give up, especially Miran. If she hadn't recklessly entered his peaceful life, he might not have so many troubles now. Perhaps choosing to leave quietly now would be the best solution for everyone. Listening to Karina's self-reproach, Dr. Winston, sitting across from her, didn't know what to say. Fortunately, the arrival of a maid interrupted Karina's feelings of guilt. "Miss Karina, the Lord wishes to invite you to dinner. May I help you dress up?" Karina responded that of course she would. After all, it had been some time since she'd seen Miran. Before leaving, Karina still asked Dr. Winston to keep their conversation confidential. A while later, Karina, elegantly dressed, appeared in the dining room, and Miran, equally well dressed, was already waiting there. Once seated, Miran began updating Karina on his activities that day, and at the end of his report he didn't forget to compliment her. "Karina, you seem to have grown even more beautiful in the last few days." This series of heartwarming gestures successfully dissolved all the resentment Karina had built up during the days she couldn't see Miran. After Marian's comment, the atmosphere between them gradually became more cheerful. Seeing the moment was right, he asked Karina the question he had been wanting to ask for days. "Karina, isn't there something you want to tell me? I know being honest with others isn't always easy, so let me be honest with you first. During the time we haven't seen each other, I've often felt very lonely, so tell me, is your health still good? If your body feels uncomfortable in any way, don't hesitate, you must tell me." Immediately, hearing this, Karina indeed found it strange. What was wrong with Miran? He kept asking about her health tonight, intentionally or not. Had he discovered something? So she tentatively asked, "Miran, has something happened recently? You don't seem very happy." Yes, something very sad did happen recently, Karina. Do you know, some time ago I came across an extremely precious flower, and the moment I saw that flower I wanted to possess it, so I began to nurture it carefully, but now I've heard that the flower is gradually withering, so I went to confirm this with a skeptical attitude only to discover I was the last to know this news. What should I do? It truly is an incredibly precious flower, the first flower that has ever made my heart flutter, but now it's about to wither and die. Hearing this, Karina understood the metaphor perfectly, but she still chose to play dumb. She slowly stood up and walked towards him. If this flower withers, there are flowers elsewhere. You can find another flower you like, and then nurture it well, she said. No, you don't understand how precious that flower is to me. There's only one such flower in this world. Nothing can replace it. If that's the case, is there any solution? Oh, what about a potion? The potion I make might work. Why don't you drink that potion? If it's such a miraculous remedy, could it cure your illness too? He asked hopefully, but Karina regretfully explained that her potions had no effect on her. Miran felt dejected upon hearing this. Indeed, how could Karina's disease be cured so easily? Must he now place all his hopes on her? By the way, Karina, I have a gift for you that I've been preparing for a long time. This is a necklace made with heron. I specifically asked the craftsman to compress it to make it as delicate and light as possible for you to carry. It took some time, and I'm only giving it to you now. Miran gave Karina a beautiful necklace. Karina took it and held it close like a treasure. This was a gift from Miran, something more valuable than any treasure in the world. Thank you, I love it. May I wear it now? As Miran looked at Karina's smile, he was momentarily captivated. He hadn't expected that a simple necklace would make Karina so happy. Finally, Miran took the necklace and personally put it on Karina. Karina, it really suits you, he said, slowly moving closer to Karina with a smile. Karina, promise me never leave me alone. Karina, live on. He ended their dinner with a passionate kiss. In recent days, these words had been echoing in Karina's mind, especially that kiss, which still kept replaying in her thoughts. She shook her head, forcefully compelling herself to calm down, and began packing things she would need for the journey, because tomorrow she would be leaving with Miran to battle the magical beasts. However, due to her worsening condition, Karina was already breathing heavily after packing for just a little while. Although the manor's maids had offered to help, Karina had refused because the maids already took such good care of her as a guest, so she really didn't feel right troubling them further. Then there was Miran, who since kissing her last time had completely let himself go. He no longer concealed his affection for Karina. Gifts flowed constantly into Karina's hands to the point where she could no longer bring herself to ask him not to like her, but the more this happened, the more Karina felt she was failing Miran. Suddenly a commotion interrupted her thoughts. It was the soldiers responsible for feeding the beast Hetty. The two were arguing about not keeping proper track of the magical beast's food, but it remained completely unaffected, wholly focused on devouring its meal. Seeing this, Karina couldn't help but smile. Hetty was living quite comfortably. But speaking of it, Karina suddenly realized something special about Hetty. She seemed able to communicate with other magical beasts. Karina had originally planned to ask it about this in detail, but various situations kept stalling her. She decided to go and find out now, but as Karina turned around, a familiar dizziness took over her body. Her art disease had struck again. In that moment, she hated herself intensely. Why was her body so frail? She hated herself, hated being sick. She clutched the necklace Miran had given her and began to fear, would her condition become more severe? Would this pain accompany her every day from now on, and then one day she wouldn't be able to endure it, finally bidding farewell to this world completely? But now she didn't want to die anymore. She had begun to love this world where the person she loved resided. In a daze, Karina saw a maid running toward her with a worried face. How she wanted to tell her she was fine and not to tell Miran, or he would worry again. When Karina opened her eyes, she saw Miran lying beside her. Good morning, Karina. Seeing Miran so close, Karina felt momentarily disoriented. Hadn't she fainted? Oh, right before she fainted, she had seen a maid running toward her with an anxious expression. But why was Miran in her bed now? This guy was really getting bolder. However, when Karina remembered that just before waking up she had been nuzzling against Miran like a little kitten, embarrassment took over, and she temporarily forgot to scold Miran for his improper behavior. Miran thoughtfully poured her a glass of water. You sweated a lot in the early morning. You must be thirsty. Now drink this water first to feel better. After drinking the water, Karina felt somewhat guilty. I fainted again yesterday, although it might not sound good, but it's all right. Karina's words were interrupted by Miran. It's okay, Karina. You were going to say that you still want to go to the forest with me no matter what, right? Seeing her thoughts read by Miran once again, Karina didn't know what to say. Watching her reaction, Miran couldn't help but laugh loudly.